Welcome back to the garage. Last week was a little bit of a bummer when we discovered the coolant leaking through the head gasket into the oil pan on an engine that hasn't been run yet. I have the old head gasket here. The thing that seems interesting is the thickness of the gasket. The most common one seems to be a 1.2 millimeter gasket, and it has a red bead of sealant that goes all the way around each of these passages. These big openings are for the push rods, and then these ovals here are for coolant. So what looked to be happening is I had coolant that was leaking out from here into that push rod cavity on these 0.8 millimeter ones, as opposed to the 1.2. Instead of having that bead of sealant around the edges, it's just this kind of dark part, and it's just on sort of the outside edge here and on the very tips of these. When you feel it, there's a step down right there. They've kind of created this step or this uneven surface where if things don't clamp down exactly right, or maybe this would have needed to go through a heat cycle to soften. I just don't understand the logic, I guess, behind how this would ever seal when you introduce kind of a step in the surface, especially on both sides. The other alternative that didn't seem to get much of any negative feedback is going with a Cometic brand multi-layer steel gasket. So this is a 30 thousandths gasket, so it crushes down just 2 thousandths thinner than what that other one does. But what I like about this one is every surface has an embossed edge on it. A little bit more advanced thing about these Cometic gaskets is you can get them in several different thicknesses and several different bores. The stock bore on a B20 is 89 millimeters. What's interesting though is on a B20E or B20F, either of the fuel injected heads, the combustion chamber is actually slightly wider than that, which is why on this gasket, they're kind of oval shaped. They're a little bit wider this way than they are this way, and that's because the combustion chamber is wider there. I ordered a 92 millimeter bore, and what that'll do is that'll keep this embossed edge totally outside of the combustion chamber. It's just right on the edge. It's a perfect fit. The other thing I've been waiting on and struggling with is this coolant hose that goes on the back of the head. This hose has been on back order for a long time. So what I found was this Gates part number 28469. It's actually a Chevy Silverado heater core hose. It's the same diameter, clearly much longer, but it has the 90 degree that I need. It's flexible enough that I should be able to get kind of a gentle bend in it. I've cleaned up the surface here a little bit. There's 2 of these O-rings on top of the water pump that should be good, but I'm just gonna clean them off and make sure that's all seated well. It's a little bit chilly out here, but I've got the head here. I put that new freeze plug in right here, and the sealant on it was still just a little bit soft. It hasn't been very warm out here. I think it says it only needs to set 2 hours before it can be put into operation, but 24 hours to fully cure. And with how soft it was, and with how soft the old stuff was when I replaced this one from the leak last week, I want to make sure it's set. I think part of the problem is the bore that plug goes in is a little bit gacked, really depending on that sealant a little bit more than usual. There's a water pump pipe coming out the bottom of the water pump that needs a new O-ring on it. So here's that pipe. It normally mounts on the front of the engine like this, and it goes up into the water pump. And there's this O-ring here. I noticed when we had really cold days in the winter, like -10 degrees, this had started seeping, and then it seemed to go away until I pressure tested it last week, and it started leaking out of there again. I'm gonna put a new O-ring on it and reinstall it and just see if I can get it to seal a little better that way. All right, it is time. might need your help.
Me?
Yeah. And hold what's under my elbow, this whole manifold thing. Okay. And now with your other arm, can
I hold that?
Yeah. Beautiful. I was trying to do it without any help, and it was hitting a point where I'm like, I just need to ask. So, thank you. So we've got the head down. I am going to run to the store and get something that maybe helps me feel a little bit more confident in these the torque specs, because my 2 torque wrenches are reading different. While we're gone, I'm going to have the system pressurized just at 2.5 psi. Well, bad news. We're back, and it did lose pressure, and I can see the spot on the side of this plug where it did squeezed out the sealant that I was afraid hadn't dried all the way. I guess that's kind of on me. I knew it was soft still, and I still pressure tested it. So this plug here, I can even see where it had, the whole plug started to push out. That never expanded enough. So here's the old plug that is hammered flat. Here's the new one. I think part of the problem is just this hole. I don't know. I mean, it's an old head. You can tell plugs have probably been replaced before. There's kind of some gouge marks, like someone pried it out. I guess not too dissimilar to what I was doing to get it back out, but by that point it was pretty much a done deal. Like even putting the old one that's hammered flat in there, it's really not a tight fit. So these disc styles are supposed to go in, and when you hammer it flat, it's supposed to spread out, but it's just not. I mean, you can see like that's a loose fit already. Either way, a bummer. I can fix this with the head on. You've seen in a previous video where I've done that already. I just have to pull the radiator out, and I have enough room to hammer something in there. So I might just see, you know, is there another sealant? Is there an epoxy I could use? Maybe I just use the same sealant and wait till it's warmer out. I'm gonna think about that. Welcome back to the garage. We gotta get some stuff cleaned up. Last time we were working on swapping the wheels on the 911, and I'm super happy with how that looks. It's all clean. Unfortunately, it's kind of rainy the next few days, so I'm probably gonna end up swapping the Touareg and the 911 at some point. But I've also been working on installing this mini split in my finished attic, which is where my home office is, and stuff is just kind of getting out of control out here because I haven't been out here, just kind of been throwing stuff in here. It's taken several days, but it looks super good. I'm pretty particular about things, and I didn't just want to run a line set down the side of the house, basically 3 stories, and have it be super exposed. So we cut the siding, we mounted the line set kind of flush with it, we custom bent some trim coil that you see sitting right back there, bent it and wrapped it, and it looks really good. We've got the unit mounted, the wires mostly ran, but don't have the final connections quite yet. And then we've got to hook up the line set and do the final charge and all of that. Through the magic of editing, it's actually almost 3 weeks since the last video working on this. So we're gonna pick up on this here in a few seconds, but I just need to clean a bunch of this stuff up. Parts for tie rods. These are the old wheels off the 911, but we just gotta get stuff cleaned up out here, get the stairs cleaned off. So this has been out here for about 2 weeks now. I haven't put coolant in it. Obviously there's no radiator, but I wanted to make sure that the epoxy had plenty of time to cure. I had gone and ordered a couple different brands of the correct size freeze plugs. And I even took a couple and flattened them first outside of the car. And when I went to put them in place, they would just plop into place. There was no tension there at all. So I went one size up. So these are 35 millimeters, which is about 1 3/8 if I recall. I went up 1/16 of an inch. So that gives me an extra 1/32 kind of on either side. This is what they normally look like. They have a little bit of a dish, kind of like a little bowl. This was the flattened one that was too loose. So I went a size up and I put it in a socket that just touched the edge, and I took a ball peen hammer and hit it in the middle to give it more of a curve, with the idea of trying to decrease the diameter a little bit. I did talk with Vintage Performance Development, John, who built this head, and I was asking him, like, what do you use to seal these? And funny enough, he just uses JB Weld. So going back to what originally even happened here, I put this head on, put coolant in it. It started leaking out a little tiny pinhole. Well, that pinhole was because someone at some point kind of pried the old plug out against the edge, and the JB Weld apparently didn't fill it. Otherwise, the plug was in there pretty solid. Put a new one in. I had just used Permatex #1, which says it's supposed to be rated for freeze plugs, and it's what I used on all the others. Granted, all the others have been sealed for months before they saw any fluid. But I don't know if my bottle went bad, but like here's some that's been out here for a week, and you can see it's still pliable. So the first couple attempts, it never cured. I'd pressurize the system, it'd start leaking again. So I'd replace it, it'd start leaking again. And part of that was because the plugs I was using wasn't sealing in the hole. You should be able to install all these plugs without any sort of sealant and they seal. But once, used stuff gets kind of worn out, kind of damaged with time. So on used engines, you often have to use a seal. If the original one just had a pinhole leak, you probably could have just pushed some JB Weld into the hole after you dried it out and it would seal. Lesson learned, maybe I'd go back and do that again. But I took my extra dished oversized plug, coated the inside with JB Weld. I had to put a socket kind of around the edge and really hammer it in. It was a very tight fit. And then once it got seated in place, I peened the middle of it to kind of flatten it back out. I took a little extra JB Weld and went around the edge. So it is in there. Fingers crossed that is in there for good. This morning, I took the oil plug out again just to make sure that we have an empty pan, because I am going to put the radiator in. I'm going to pressurize the system for a bit, make sure the pressure doesn't drop. Then I'm going to put coolant in it and probably let it sit for a few days and make sure no coolant goes into the engine. All right, I've got the radiator back in, the coolant line's hooked up. I've got this new cap on the bottle. The old one, it was rated for 10 PSI, but it kept leaking at 5. And so I'm hoping that this new one will hold up to 10. And I can hear it, it's really faint. But it is relieving pressure now. We're at 10 PSI. Well, we're at about 12 PSI. The bad news is I do hear something leaking over here. So it's kind of hard to see, but there's this elbow. It's this shiny looking piece down there. I don't think it's actually leaking from the hose. if we look at the old engine, we can see on the old engine that this elbow is two pieces that get welded together. Looking at the new one, this weld looks a little porous. I think I'm gonna pull this one off and put it on. When you look at this guy, it has a nice uniform weld bead all the way around it. And when you look at this guy, there is kind of a little pinhole right there. But it seemed to be bubbling right from that little hole. When I put my finger over it, it would stop. Slap a little sealant on this guy and we'll thread it on in there. I got that new one on there. A couple of things that I didn't really talk out loud about as I was doing them. I could hear the leak coming from the back, but I couldn't exactly see where it was. So I grabbed this piece of hose, put it to my ear, and then kind of used it as a stethoscope to listen for where the hissing was coming from. To get this out, I was kind of doing a combination of finding a wrench that was a nice tight fit to kind of spin it around, and then also adjustable wrench to kind of fit over here when this was facing down where I can't reach it. That's all hooked back up. Let's pressurize it again. Gotta put the cap back on. All right. We're almost to 10 PSI. I don't want to go beyond that. I know that this works, so I don't want to worry about this hissing or being the cause of the PSI dropping. I just want to kind of listen now. The needle is basically just above 9 PSI. So I think I'm going to let it sit here under pressure for an hour or so and come back and just make sure that it's not dropping, because if it's dropping, then we'd be losing coolant somewhere. We are back after an hour or so. It has dropped about a PSI. I don't know if that, it was right about 9 pounds. Now it's right about 8 pounds. I think I might move forward with filling this back up. Hindsight's 2020. We'll see what happens in the future. I might reflect back on this. Got quite the contraption set up here, but basically there is an air hose running to an air compressor. There's a valve here. It actually uses air pressure to pull vacuum on the engine. We're gonna pull vacuum until we're in this yellow region on the gauge. We're gonna let it sit there for 5 minutes, see if it drops, and then we'll go ahead and dunk this hose into our bottles of coolant, and it'll suck everything back in under pressure. So we're just trying to remove as much air from the system as possible so that we don't run into like an airlock when we're trying to start this up for the first time, because if there's air in the system, it's not always going to circulate the coolant how it should. You're more likely to have some overheating. So let's give this a shot. This is the first time that I've used this, so I'm hoping it works out. All right, so I actually did 2 rounds of this. The first 5-minute wait, it dropped maybe ½ an inch of mercury, if that. So I did it once more for a second cycle, and this time it's barely moved. There's just no coolant at all in here. So it's a big volume of air and little fluctuations. I'm not super worried about considering the volume of air. So I'm just watching in the bottle, kind of waiting for the top of that brass colored fitting to get uncovered. Transferred what was left of the other bottle, sticking the new one in. That's probably where I'm going to leave it for the time being. The overflow level is over halfway. It's towards the high end we'll go ahead and get this all disconnected here. Here's the dilemma I face, and I'm trying to figure out really just what I want to do next. One, let it sit for a couple days, see if I end up with any coolant in the oil pan again. Two, do I just put it back together and try and run it? I had read like 2 comments about Cometic head gaskets. Sometimes they might seep a little coolant until you put them through the first heat cycle and torque down the head again. I don't know. I don't know what to think about that, because a little bit of me is like, well, if it ends up seeping coolant again, is that just because the head gasket needs to go through a heat cycle? Or is there a larger problem? I mean, ideally, there just wouldn't be any leak now or after its heat cycle. Given the timing and other stuff that I have to do this weekend, it's probably best just to let it sit. Let's let this sit for a couple days. Next time, God willing, we'll be bolting the manifolds back on, putting the rockers back in place, priming the oil pump, setting the timing, filling it up with fluids, and starting it. I hope. If I come back here in a few days and there's a coolant leak, I don't know what I would do. Hey guys, just a quick update. It is 9 p.m. on Wednesday. This video is actually going out tomorrow. This has been sitting out here for a few days, and I've been honestly kind of scared to check. It's been just a challenging week with a bunch of projects and stuff going on, real mentally draining. And I just would be crushed if this is still leaking coolant into the oil pan. I just got home a bit ago from our monthly Volkswagen Club meeting, and was talking with my friend Jeff there, and he was asking how it's going, and I said I haven't checked, and he said kind of afraid to look, and I said yeah. So I looked. I have not put oil in it, so I drained the oil pan to see, is there any coolant or is it still empty? And here's what I found. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if like a drop or 2 comes out just left over, but I'm just hoping not a real noticeable amount. None. That is just oil. That's right, there is no coolant in the oil anymore. So I think we're good to go. Next video, we will be putting this all back together and we will be starting it. So just had to add this in there at the end. I wasn't planning on checking, but since I did, and since I still have a little bit of time before putting the video out, there you go. A little bit of an update. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.